Look at this.
And here we go. One more?
One more. Let's go. There you go.
All right, we're done.
Good workout. Good workout.
It's never a bad workout.
Welcome to Wolfe versus Wrath.
Welcome.
This is Wolfe.
I am Wolf.
My name is Wrath.
Yes, you are.
And we are the best of friends.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. But we don't agree on everything.
A lot of things.
One of the things that we don't agree on is this term, toxic masculinity.
No.
Let's see what the internet, your favorite resource, Wikipedia,
highly credible,
has to say about toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is used in psychology and media discussions of masculinity to refer to certain cultural norms that are associated with harm to society and to men themselves. Traditional stereotypes of men as socially dominant, along with related traits such as misogyny and homophobia, can be considered toxic, due in part to their promotion of violence, including sexual assault and domestic violence. I'll stop there.
Can I ask one favor?
What's that?
Now look up just masculinity.
All right, let's do that.
I can't wait for this.
Masculinity.
You did read in that definition the word stereotype was in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Just point that out.
Masculinity, also called manhood or manliness, is a set of attributes, behaviors, and roles associated with boys and men as a social construct is distinct from the definition of the male biological sex. Standards of manliness or masculinity vary across different cultures and historical periods, yada, yada.
Vary across what now?
Different cultures and historical periods.
In other words, it varies over everything. So, did I make my point yet, or do we have to get?
Nope. So
have to get nasty about it?
So, what is your take on it, on toxic masculinity? We'll start there.
So, it's very simple. So, my opinion, based on everything that I've experienced and researched, masculinity has a definition, obviously.
Yes, it does.
Right.
I just read it.
And if you looked up toxic, as you know, in reference to the psychology of it, has a definition. Right.
Yes, it does.
So I surmise that it is very easy for toxicity to be non-gender specific.
It can be, but this is referring specifically to those attributes and behaviors that are unique to.
Are they?
Oh, yes.
Really?
So let me give you an example.
Please do.
Let me give you an example.
Yes.
So, two cisgendered heterosexual women.
Right.
One of them has a really bad day. Maybe she just broke up with her boyfriend or her girlfriend.
Right.
And she calls her friend over. It is not uncommon for them to hug, cuddle, and watch a show together for her to feel better.
Right.
Could you see you and I cuddling to make you feel better?
Why not?
But when was the last time you cried on my shoulder? I'm your best friend, right?
Right.
When's the last time you cried on my shoulder?
I don't remember the last time.
Exactly.
That is not.
And because let me continue. Because for men, we view that type of affection in a sexual context. So we would say, oh, if we were cuddling, you must be gay. Because for us, affection automatically goes to sex.
So that being the general idea of what we're talking about today, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's incorrect and invalid and offends me as a male to make toxic behavior in general, specifying masculinity.
Because there are some traits that are unique to men, and that's one of them. Being taught that any sign of weakness is unmanly.
Toxic behavior is not specific to men or women.
I'm not saying toxic behavior. I'm not saying all toxic behavior is specific to men. I'm saying that in male culture, especially in Western male culture, there are specific behaviors that are considered okay and some that are not. And most of us grow up thinking that any displays of weakness or emotion makes you weak and makes you unmanly. And in fact,
I couldn't agree more. So bear with me, stay with me for just one moment.
All right.
So
I got you.
Everything that you've said is completely valid in my opinion and completely accurate. The problem I have is when it's taken to a point of not speaking from an analytical, purely non-emotional, objective point of view.
I just did.
And that's why we're best friends. Right. How often do you hear that phrase uttered in that arena, that flavor? You don't. What you see is a lot of people, and I'm talking about the most of the time that I've heard toxic masculinity thrown around on social media or in person, typically social media, chicken shit. That's a whole nother subject. But it is spoke of as if it's to support an agenda of differentiation from toxic feminine or toxic.
Well, there is a difference between toxic femininity and toxic masculinity. There is a difference.
Toxic
because
is
like
toxic.
I said,
why does it matter that you're differentiating?
Because there are different, those norms and behaviors are different in a woman versus a man. I'm not saying women can't be raised the same way to suppress their emotions and so on and so forth, but that's atypical. What we're talking about is typical. It's typical of the way men are raised to be different, to be these automatons, these machines that work,
absolutely,
fight.
Yes.
Women and children first. We'll die. I don't want to get into the whole red pill thing, but
that's a thing.
We're expendable in a certain way because we're the first ones to go to war. We're the ones who are typically, historically, the ones that are pushed to work ourselves to the bone.
Aggression based.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So so much so that a man who can't fight. What is your opinion of a man who cannot fight?
Depends.
It doesn't depend.
It does.
It doesn't. Tell me honestly.
None of them are complimentary. I will say that. So so guilty if you're getting there. So my take on it is people's motive. And the way that they portray it to support their specific narrative.
And here you're talking about like sexual aggression.
I'm just talking about people that use it. So I'm going to get a little political. What a shocker. All right. So I am a moderate, pretty much because I can't stand any of the bastards. Like at all.
You're a conservative moderate.
No, I'm just a conservative because I frankly don't think we have the money in the United States to buy right now. We just got to save our money and it's just that people need to get a grip is what in my opinion. So, but what I typically hear this word toxic masculinity, it's not your white typical cis male or even your average middle class, your conservatives, your Republicans. I'm not hearing that from them.
No, you're not. Because
So bear with me, please.
All right.
I'm going somewhere, I promise.
All right, go ahead.
So it's you're typically left-leaning, wannabe progressives, because that's not progressive.
I don't know if that makes
twisted.
them wannabes. I don't know if it's twisted. I think it's factual.
It's my feelings, and my feelings matter. See what I did there? All right. So that's what I hear. So, you toxic masculinity. You this. It's just this. It's a cavalier attitude.
And when do you hear
of accusation to pigeonhole somebody that you're this and it's a bad thing?
And when do you hear that typically? You hear it in regards to sexual aggression against women.
Oppressive behavior in general, of course. Which is shit. Completely.
But it's not completely wrong. I mean, through our history...
You mean oppressive behavior?
No, I'm saying oppressive behavior specifically against women.
Through
our history...
Of course it happens.
Through our history, I mean, rape is... It's part of... it was part of our culture as men for a long time.
You're talking about ancient history?
Yes. Yeah, maybe I am talking about ancient history, but not as ancient as you thought. I mean, so look at a series like Mad Men. that's talking about, that was what, the 40s?
50s.
40s, 50s, somewhere around there, around the Great Depression, post Great Depression,
post-war.
So that was fairly recent when it was okay to sexually harass your secretary.
Was it?
Yeah, it
was.
It was. I'm not saying it was okay from a moral standpoint.
Not by everybody.
I'm not saying it was okay from a moral standpoint. I'm saying that legally a woman had no recourse if she was sexually harassed by her boss or her male coworker, and it was normalized in our society at that point. And do you think those short 50 years later or 70, 60 years later, 70, whatever, I'm getting old. So that short span has completely erased that whole way of being from our culture.
No, of course not.
Of course not.
That's why we have laws to protect people. More laws now than we ever have to protect people from shitty behavior.
But sexual harassment still happens. That's why the whole Me Too movement came about. And that's why the term toxic masculinity has been thrown around so much, is because we have realized that way of being that was normal just 60, 70 years ago still exists.
Common, not normal.
It was normal. It was normalized in our culture.
It was
normalized in our culture. It was just typical in our culture.
Yes, typical.
Exactly.
It was not well adjusted. It was dysfunctional then. They knew it then.
They did not know it then. They did not know it then. It was normalized. It was normalized back then. They did not know. They knew that they were making somebody feel bad.
Well,
in retrospect, a lot of them would have been shocked. There are people today that when they sexually harass a woman and they get confronted about it, they are shocked. They don't realize that they've done it because to them it's normal. Well, just go back 60, 70 years ago. You don't think that they thought that was normal and okay? Of course they did. I would argue
that response in shock is plausible deniability.
It's not, though.
So here's,
it's not.
You're being accused of a thing. So you have two options, right? You either cop to it, be responsible, and admit it, or you act shocked and amazed.
But I'm saying...
So you're being interviewed by a cop. And a cop, you did a thing. You robbed a store, you shot somebody, you killed somebody. I'm being accusatory. You've got two options. You can either admit it and, confess, or you can deny it and, either be flat about it or be shocked about it. Oh, I can't believe that was offensive to you. And I had no idea. It's called shirking of accountability. It's really common. And it's a smoke, and it's ingenuine. It's not accurate.
Disingenuous. And I agree with you.
Thank you.
And I agree with you. There is a portion of that. But there are some people who, let's say that every morning they go up to their secretary and they massage her shoulders. And they think they're a nice guy for doing it. She cringes every time it happens. Yeah. Eventually, she reports him. And he goes, oh, I thought she liked that. I was just being nice.
Because she didn't say F off.
Exactly.
Right.
And because for him, it's okay to touch a woman. That's normalized in his world. It's normalized in his world. I've seen it. I have friends who have been fired for sexual harassment, and I know them. They're personally,
right.
And they were completely shocked. Oh, I didn't think I was harassing that woman. I was just, walking up, touching her. I was flirting with her. I was just being playful. I thought she liked it.
So my point really about saying that toxic masculinity specifically does not exist is because of the way it's used. The original idea of oppression was to make people no longer be oppressed, right?
It was exerting their feelings of superiority, not necessarily. Regardless, I almost said irregardless. That's in the damn dictionary now.
It's a word now. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But regardless of how that person felt, it wasn't deliberately to make someone feel bad or feel inferior all the time. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it was just they didn't care. All they were doing was, I feel powerful. And this person is weaker than me.
Bear with me, though.
So I'm going to, exert my privilege,
of course,
over them.
But the point of not doing that was to stop the oppression of another person. Period. Whether it be sexual.
That's why the laws are in place.
Okay.
The laws are in place to put brakes on what was normal in our culture,
or to punish. So if you do this, there's consequence A.
Exactly. Right. Because there were no consequences. That's why it became normal in our culture. And that's why it became part of our idea of masculinity.
Right. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Here's the problem. Me Too was a great idea in its infancy. Yes. Would you agree with that?
I think it was a great idea, period.
I think it was a great idea, period. Here's where it went terribly wrong.
I don't think it did go wrong.
It did on a many occasion. And it was a pure idea that was a great idea that put the spotlight on dysfunctional behavior, oppressive behavior, intolerable behavior, and then everybody, I mean a lot of people, and it's been proven, took that and said, me too. And it never happened to them. Why? Because they got attention.
I don't think it was a lot of people. Statistically, the number of women who falsely accuse people is, it is statistically it's statistically irrelevant. It's so small. The number of women who don't come forward is far greater. Far greater.
Right. And
it is literally statistically irrelevant. It's so small.
It's not
the number
of
the number. I'm saying that statistically, it's less than 1%. The number of women who falsely accuse someone.
So, as far as the Me Too movement, it started out great. It still is a great thing. And you're saying
full stop.
Right. Well, that's with you. The problem I have is how people use it now. And I've seen it en masse. You say what you say.
I disagree 1%. That it's en masse.
You have the right to disagree. I'm simply saying it happens more than it ever should. And
I don't think so.
Yes, because
still women are afraid to come forward.
And
the number of women that falsely accuse a man is minute compared to the number that do not report it at all. It is minute.
We're not talking about the ones that don't report. It's sad, it's tragic, it's fear-based, it's horrible. Who wouldn't agree with that? Of course. What I'm talking about are regardless of how inconsequential this 1% I think it's more like 10%, frankly, but even 10% is horrific, that undermine the credibility of these things that are trying to be done to heal people and to make it a healthy environment, a true healthy environment, not a safe space. A true healthy environment, by the way, just so you know, a safe space originally was designed for a place for people that could lose their crap, they could talk about things without fear of reprisal. It wasn't the lack of confrontation, which is what it's now turned into.
It's the exact same thing.
It's completely different.
Well, I don't want to derail the conversation. So you said something that was important.
Our conversation right now, in my opinion, by definition, when it was first invented, is a safe space. Why? Because there's no fear for reprisal between you and me.
It's a different. You're changing the definition of a safe. A safe space was originally for people who have to deal with prejudices and
PTSD,
bigotry,
LGBTQ, harassment
out in society,
right?
To be in a place with people like them,
right,
where they will not feel judged or criticized or attacked.
And
that's what it was for.
And have conflict and meltdowns and all the things.
It was to avoid the conflict and meltdown because they have this stress in their lives outside in the regular world. And this was a one moment when they could come and not have to deal with all that stress and all the confrontation that they deal with every day.
From those people out there.
Exactly. From those out there. So in here, you're with people who are just like you, and the microaggressions that you experience every day outside of that safe space,
right,
you're safe from.
Correct.
That was the point of it.
Right. But now what it has turned into is here where I can go where there's zero aggression, there's zero conflict.
That's what it was from the beginning. That was
anybody.
Well, not from people. No,
yes.
I disagree.
I've heard people so many times, this is going bad. I'm just going to duck out of this. And they have this idea that a safe space is bereft of all conflict whatsoever.
No, well, so here's the thing.
Dream.
I agree that that's a pipe dream.
I
don't agree that that's what safe spaces have all become. Anytime you put a group of any people together, there's going to be conflict, and everyone has the right to withdraw from that. And if it becomes toxic, you have the right to withdraw from that environment, and that doesn't mean that the whole concept of safe spaces is wrong.
No,
it just means that
it was designed to be very healthy,
this particular safe space has become toxic for me, and even though these are people like me, I can withdraw from it because it is no longer healthy for me. That's fine. That's okay. That doesn't negate the whole purpose of a safe space. But let's get back to toxic masculinity.
But it's redefining. But I'm still talking about the same thing. The essence of the same thing. It's redefining what the common idea of what that is. So toxic masculinity it doesn't exist, and I'll tell you why. You're either toxic.
I just told you why it exists.
There is toxic behavior. It doesn't matter if it's gender specific. It shouldn't matter. Why does it matter?
But it does because there are issues that are specific to our gender. There are issues, our cultural heritage as men. There are issues that are specific to it, and we can. By just dealing with toxicity itself,
right.
That is a huge elephant. You want to eat the elephant one bite at a time. And the first bite of that elephant is toxic masculinity. So maybe not the first, but it's one. It's a small bite that we can deal with rather than dealing with the entire elephant.
I understand that.
All right.
So what's the motive behind specifying masculinity, toxic specific?
Because that is a smaller chunk that we can bite, that we can deal with.
So
rather than dealing with toxicity of all genders, all nationalities, all races, all gender expressions, so on, in mass, that is too big to deal with at one time. But we can break. No. I'm saying that they're smart because what you do to it with any problem is you break it up into manageable chunks, and one of those manageable chunks is toxic masculinity.
So they're not capable of managing bigger chunks, so they're stupid. Okay,
no, that is not what it means. It means that is smart. That is how anyone does business. You don't have a problem in business and deal with it as this one big monster. You break it up. All right, you are an expert in this area. I want you to deal with this aspect of the problem. You're an expert at this area. I want you to deal with this. And you break it up into manageable bites. That's what we're doing by labeling that toxic masculinity, is breaking it up into a manageable
Bear with
bite.
me for a second. Point out and stay with me for this. I'm going to make you can understand what I'm saying and why. Specifically,
I understand what you're saying. I just don't agree with it.
I know. So point out a specific toxic behavior that is specific only ever to masculinity.
But that's not the point. The point is that that's not the point. The point is that it is typical in masculine behavior. Not that it's exclusive to it, but that it is typical to it. That it is pervasive. That is the point.
Right.
Not that it's exclusive to it.
What's the motive behind the point, though?
I just explained that so that you can deal with it as a smaller, manageable problem rather than this huge thing. If you just we're going to deal with toxicity of all kinds in all cultures and all races and all genders. That's too big. So that's not even a problem. I mean, that's not even really a plan. So that's a hope without a plan. That's nothing.
So you truly believe that when somebody points out specific toxic masculinity, that they're completely benevolent and they have no twisted motive at all, specifying a specific toxic behavior.
So you're asking me to extrapolate an entire world of 8 trillion people and their motivations. There's no way I can do that.
Just America.
What I'm saying, but even still, there's how many people are in America? There's like 600. No, we're more than that. We're 600 million or something now.
335 million.
No, that was years ago.
No, it's
no.
It is.
Anyway, but it doesn't matter. It's still hundreds of millions of people. All right, whether it's 300 or 600, it's still hundreds of millions of people. But I cannot tell you the motivations of all 300 million people. What I can tell you is that there are specific ways in which you tackle problems in any arena, whether it's science, whether it's social, whether it's political, and you do it by breaking it up into smaller chunks.
I'm aware
smaller,
of that.
manageable
That's
chunks.
Not the point
you
here.
define it, and then you attack it. And that's what we've done with toxic masculinity is we have defined it.
Oh, you've defined it all
so that we can conquer it.
Yeah, conquer who?
Conquer the problem. It's us against the problem. Not man against woman. It's men and women against the problem.
That anytime that you see a dysfunctional motive, that you explain to them to get back on track and stop wavering and stop trying to use that as some twisted, offensive, sort of degrading, condemning. So when they're not actually doing anything toxic or masculine, period. But it sort of resembles it. I see it all the time on social media and in
there
person.
are extremists exist of all kinds. And that doesn't, and you don't define the whole by the extremes.
But why can't we talk about the extremes?
We can talk about the extremes, that's fine. But it doesn't negate the whole, is what I'm saying.
What I'm saying is,
then why are you dismissing the whole notion of toxic masculinity because of the extremes?
It's taken a pure thing, toxic behavior, and they've specified it to designate, if you're masculine and you're toxic, then let's talk about you specifically, and we're going to do
so that we can deal with the problem. That we can deal with the problem.
But they don't wish to. They just
yes, they do. Of course they do.
I've seen too many people point the finger with no solution at all.
You've seen a couple of people in your circle, but again, we're talking about the entirety of America, not just one small social circle.
Is toxic masculinity a clinical term?
It is a psychological term. Yes, it is.
Is it a clinical term?
I'm not sure what you mean by it. It is a psychological term.
It is a psychological term. You betcha. It is not a clinical term.
Okay.
You ever wondered why it's not clinical?
I have not looked that up. I have not looked that up.
Toxic behavior is.
So you're talking to a writer. All words exist because people have gotten together and agreed that that's the definition of it. So we can move past that. We've all gotten together and agreed on a definition of toxic masculinity. Whether the board of psychology agrees with it is irrelevant. The word exists in our culture now. The word exists in our culture now. Toxic. I just said irregardless. I hate the fact that that's in the dictionary now. But it is because people use it and they've agreed that it means something. So whether I hate it or not is irrelevant now.
It means something. Toxic masculinity means a whole lot. And that means I'm not looking at you as a human being. I'm looking at you as a man, you dirty man.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't negate you as a human being.
Yes.
It doesn't negate you as a human being. It implies,
the way I've heard it used many, many times, it's a level of dysfunction because someone wants to separate you from the non-toxic, non-masculine, apparently. I didn't know that
exactly, because there is a differentiation between masculine behavior that is healthy, protective, nurturing, providing,
that's specific
all
to
of
masculine?
that. I'm not saying it's specific. Again, it is not exclusive to men, obviously, but it is normal and typical of men. Especially, because
years ago it was typical for them to hit,
and we haven't moved past that. I mean, we have made great strides in our movement away from heteronormal behaviors, but those great strides are not complete. We're still men and women still have definitions that we may not agree with, and we think we should be above that, but they still exist in our culture, and we can't just ignore it.
No, nobody's saying to
people
ignore
still think of men as protector, provider,
right?
So
which is twisted because my wife makes more money than I do,
and my wife makes more money than me, and I have no issue with it.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, we consider those healthy behaviors.
But we consider that could go off the rails so
absolutely.
Quickly. Do you know
if it becomes
that would look down their nose at you and I both, depending on who they are, because we don't make as much money?
And you know what those people are exhibiting? Toxic masculinity.
I've seen women do it just as much as men.
And because they bought into it. They bought into that culture of toxic masculinity.
Why does it have to be masculine? Why can't it just be toxic full stop?
Because it exists in men. It exists the way we are raised and brought up, the way we are socialized.
Behavior as men.
They do, but it is different.
No, it's not.
It is different because it is not normalized in female versus male culture. It is not. It is normalized in male culture. You ask any 100 men how you were brought up. You ask any 1,000 men in America. You ask any 1,000 men in America, were you brought up to believe that it was okay to cry on somebody's shoulder or to cry in public? Just say that. To cry in public. Is it okay for you to cry on another man's shoulder? Is it okay for you to tell other people that you're weak, that you feel bad, so on and so forth? That's why men have such a hard time seeking mental health.
I couldn't agree more.
Because it is normalized in our culture.
So let me ask you this, though, based on what you just said, which I completely agree with. So has crying in public ever been used? And I mean, if you don't admit this, has ever been used as a manipulative tactic? At nauseam.
By men or women?
By anybody.
Of course it is. Of course it has been.
Acting class.
Of course it has, but that's not the point. That's not the point.
America, they teach people, you bite the back of your tongue to cause tears. You pluck your nose.
Yeah.
People who learn
but that is not
how to
the point.
use this tactic. Oh, yes, it is.
But that's not the point. The point is that if a man cries in public, it is viewed as a weakness. It is not viewed the same way outside of male culture. So female culture, women are allowed to cry in public and it's considered normal. It is a problem. It is a problem, and it is a problem for us as men that we are not allowed to show emotions without us being considered.
Really? Nobody ever told
not
me.
Allowed in society. You are judged harshly in this society
and
if you show emotions.
They judge me.
And that's great. Yep. It's great that you have the power to resist it. What I'm saying is that not everyone does. Right. A lot of people, and that's the reason why it's so hard for men to go out and get help and admit they need help.
Right.
Because
and not everyone uses
that
toxic masculinity as a pure form of designation.
But we're talking about the extremes.
Frequently.
Again, we're talking about the extremes. What I'm saying is...
Does that not bother you, though? That it undermines the essence of the credibility of it? So why does no one want to address it? Why does everybody want to look at everything?
Because we address one problem at a time. And right now, the problem...
You're full of shit. Nobody wants to talk about, okay, I've heard your thing, I've heard it, whatever, or I've read it. Okay, whatever the case would be.
We just lost sponsors with those S-word bombs you dropped.
Oh, did you? Well, he's got to edit. So I think far too many people are to cherish the beautiful essence of awareness of toxicity, masculine or feminine, whatever. By the way, in a world of pronouns, that's offensive, just so you know.
What's that?
Masculine or feminine.
Well,
that's a binary. Let me go somewhere with that.
Go ahead.
In a binary society,
I agree. But let's save that for a conversation for another day.
But you see where I'm going with that? Slightly going to take this idea and then make it binary again. When there are people that are not binary that still have toxicity. Wow. Then if there's more than binary that have toxicity, then it's not really about gender.
But it's not.
It's just toxic. Full stop.
But that is too big. Toxic is an umbrella term. We're breaking it down so that it's manageable. Here's this. Let's bring this around.
I think you American public are smart enough to handle the elephant in the room.
It's not about intelligence. Breaking it down into smaller parts is an intelligent way to handle any problem. That is the intelligent way to do it. That is the scientific way to do it, is breaking it down into manageable parts.
It's a way.
How about this? Right. If I agree that there are extremes, that we're in situations where people have used the term toxic masculinity as a stick to beat men with, will you agree? Will you agree? That
maybe
toxic masculinity, on the whole, is an apt description for some of the ways in which you and I were raised?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Without hesitation.
And I love you, brother.
I love you, brother.
All right. Hit like and subscribe.
Yeah. The bell thing, too.
If you like what you heard today, like and subscribe.
And this is how two knuckle dragon alpha male primals go lock horns and drag our knuckles across the ground and talk about problems that are important to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm going to cry.
Amen.
I actually might.
You know, toxic masculinity is one of those things that obviously is a hot target. And I hear what you're saying about, the gender bias towards stuff, but I also hear what you're saying about, like, hey, like this is you got to start somewhere.